Hey, what's up? It's Brock and welcome back to another video. We're going to be talking about creating an HTML web page in this video and laying out a very simple page and kind of taking a deeper dive into some of the elements that you will commonly use when creating HTML pages. So what are these basic elements? Well, the first one is headings. Headings range from an H1 all the way through an H6, with H1 being the largest and most prominent, and H6 being the smallest and the bottom of the hierarchy. Heading information can be used by user agents when scraping your website to create a table of contents for the web page automatically. You should avoid using heading elements simply because of their size. Instead, you should use CSS to resize them. You want to maintain the integrity of the semantics of the heading tags throughout your document. You should also avoid skipping heading levels. So you always want to start with a single H1, and then you can have multiple H2s, H3s, so on and so forth. You only want one H1 per page. It should concisely describe the overall purpose of that page. While you can have more than one, the browser's not going to stop you. It's not going to yell at you if you have 2 or 3 H1s. Semantically, you only want one. And so it's best practice to just have a single H1 at the top of the page to describe what that page is about in its entirety. The second thing you need to know is paragraphs. Paragraphs are denoted by a P tag, and paragraphs are usually represented in visual media as blocks of text that are separated from adjacent blocks by blank lines and or first line indentation. But in HTML, paragraphs can be any structural grouping of related content like images or form fields. The third thing you need to know about are lists, and there are 2 different types. There are ordered lists, which consist of items that are labeled in a specific order, like a recipe that has steps that need to be completed in a certain series for a certain outcome. And the second is unordered lists, which are a bulleted list of items that don't really have a specific order to them, things like a shopping list. Both types of lists contain list item elements that are denoted by LI tags. The fourth thing that you need to know about is nav, or navigation. The nav element represents a section of a page whose purpose is to provide navigation links either within the current document using IDs or to other documents or web pages using external domain URLs. Common examples of navigation sections are menus, tables of contents, and indexes. The fifth thing that you need to know about is the header, which is usually a group of introductory and navigational aids towards the top of your web page. So this is something like the header or top bar of Facebook with a link to the home page and a search box, and then a button that you can click on to get to your profile. The sixth thing that you need to know about is the footer. Every page usually has a footer, or every website really has a footer that's consistent across pages. The footer is usually the place where you stick links to extra content or legal notices and copyright information. It doesn't usually have much visual appeal to it, but it is usually slam-packed with useful information located at the bottom or the end of a web page. The next thing you need to know about is the section element, which represents a generic standalone part of a document that doesn't have a more specific semantic element to represent it. And then the last 2 things that you need to know about are not actually specific elements, but types of elements, and they are inline and block. So inline elements are those which only occupy the space bound by the tags defining that element instead of breaking the flow of the document. So you can think about inline elements as you're going to check out at the grocery store. You get to the queue and you get behind somebody, and then somebody comes along and gets behind you, and then somebody behind them, and then somebody behind them, and so on and so forth. And everybody just naturally falls in line with where they naturally should go. And so that's how you can think about inline elements. A block level element flips that on its head. Block level elements occupy the entirety of the horizontal space of the parent element, as well as the vertical space equal to the height of the contents, thereby creating a block. Browsers typically display the block level element with a new line both before and after that element so that you can visualize them as a separate block. And these block elements stack on top of each other on the page, and you can think of them like a stack of boxes. So now that we have briefly touched on the different types of elements, let's actually jump into our example page and start adding some of these in there. If you did not watch and follow along with the last video, don't freak out. We're starting with a pretty much bare bones HTML web page. If you want to follow along with this exercise, the two things that you need are a text editor and a web browser. I'm using Visual Studio Code and Firefox, but you can use whatever you want. Okay, so we are starting back with the same document that we left off in the last video. This page is going to be used across multiple videos, so I would make sure that you have this saved and can refer back to it pretty easily. My page is on Memphis, Tennessee, because that's where I live. You can follow along and also do your page on Memphis, or you can pick a different city. You can do the city that you live in, or you can do it on whatever else you want to do and just make your own example as we go. It doesn't really matter. So starting off in the body, we want to start with just a paragraph tag. And so we're going to make this be a little bit of a bio about Memphis, right? And so I will just grab this first paragraph off of Wikipedia, and I'll paste that in here, and then I'll save, and then I'm going to turn on word wrap so that it wraps and it looks nice and easy. And then I'll just refresh, and you can see we now have our paragraph about Memphis here. So if we're thinking about an actual web page, we probably also want to add in a heading at the beginning to let everybody know what the page is about. And so we want to use our landmark H1 tag. And so I'll just say Memphis, Tennessee. I'll save that and I can refresh. And so now we have our H1 tag followed by our paragraph tag. So next, let's talk about some of the other headers. So I'm going to do an H2 here, and inside of this H2, I'm going to say attractions, and then I'll come underneath that H2 tag, and I want to add in an H3, and I'll put sports teams here, and then underneath the H3, I'll do an H4, and now I'll list out the different sports that Memphis has teams for. So there is a basketball team, there is a baseball team, and there is a soccer team or a football team if you're not in the US. And so then I'll just save this and I'll give this a refresh. And you can see the different visual hierarchy that each one of these tags have. So we have our H1 here at the top, which is obviously the biggest. And then we have our H2. And then we have our H3. And then we have 3 different H4 tags that are all the same size. So now what I want to do is I want to go underneath each sport, and I want to add an H5 tag with the name of the team inside of those sports. So for basketball, that is the Memphis Grizzlies, and for baseball, that would be the Redbirds, and then for soccer, that would be 901 FC. So again, now we can see more visual hierarchy. These H5 tags with the team names are even smaller. Okay, now because this is getting just a little long, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out those lines, because I'm going to come underneath the Grizzlies, and now I'm going to make a list of the people on the roster for that team. And I'm not going to do the entire roster, but I'll do an H6 here, which is the last heading tag that we have, and I'll say roster, and then I will create the list. So we haven't made a list yet. And this does not need to be an ordered list. This can be an unordered list. It can be a UL, because this is not a series of steps like a recipe. This is just a list of players. And so we'll do a UL and then we'll do an LI. And inside of the LI, we will add the name of the players. So we have Ja Morant, we have Desmond Bane, we have Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams. So if I save that, now you can see the visual hierarchy in order: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, and then our ordered list. Now, obviously, the word roster is smaller than we would want in a normal web page, but you also would probably, it's not often that you actually get down to an H6. Usually you might get to H4, but H3 is usually about where you stop in page hierarchy, just with the natural flow of your content. But for the sake of this example, we're going all the way down to H6. If we wanted to make this bigger, we would come behind with some CSS later on and we would style this so that it wasn't so small. But again, we're just dealing with the HTML, with the markup of the page. So we're not worried about looks right now. So there is the UL with the list item elements. I'm going to come now and nest an ordered list inside of the unordered list. And so to do that, what I'll do is I'll come inside of this LI, or underneath this LI. Or actually no, I want to be inside the LI, like this. And so under Ja Morant, what I want to do is I want to add an ordered list with more LIs for every season that he has been with the team. I don't know how long Ja Morant has been with the team, so I'm just going to make it up on the fly here and say he's been with the team for 2 years. So then I'll save that and I'll refresh, and now you can see the difference between unordered and ordered list. So the players are the unordered list and the seasons are the ordered list. Okay, so now I'm going to comment out the other players just because, again, it's getting a little bit long. I'll refresh, let you see what we're working with. So now we've got a bunch of elements here, and for semantic purposes, we want to group them together. So what I'll do is I will come below this paragraph, and I will do a section here, and I will just grab that ending and I will put it after the UL here, after this first comment. And I'm going to do it's a Control-Shift-P to bring up the command palette in VS Code. And I'm just going to quickly format this so that it gets nice and pretty. And so this is what I will call, I'm doing Control and / to make these lines a comment, by the way. I'm going to add a comment here that says that this is beginning attractions section. And then I will add another section right here. And this one will be begin sports section. And so I'll come after the sports and I will add another section to the end here. That would be right here. And I'll format that again. And so it looks like we have two sections butting up against each other in here, like they're just nested. But if we wanted to, we have this H2 here for attractions, denoting that we have an attractions section. If we wanted to, we could add another section here after the sports section and inside of the attractions section, and we could say something like museums, and then we could repeat the same process here where we wrap that in a section, and this would be begin museum section, and then we would, then we would end museum section, and then this would be end sports section, and down here this would be end attractions section. And let me just go ahead and remove some of these unwanted comments from some of that earlier content that we were dealing with, and then I'll reformat that and I'll refresh. So not a lot changed visually on the page, but we added some landmark section tags to make our semantics of our page a little bit more easy to read. So we start with our attractions section. It has two sections in it, a sports section and a museum section. Okay, so we've gone over paragraphs, we've gone over headings, we've gone over lists and list items. Now let's go back up to the top and let's talk about headers. So the very first thing we would want if this were like a blog about Memphis is we would want a header. And inside of this header, we would probably want some navigation links so that we could click around and go to different sections of the page, right? And so that is the navigation or the nav element. And then inside of the nav element, we would want a list. So we would probably do an unordered list here with an li. And this is where we could add links to those landmark sections that we made down below. So if we wanted to, we could add one here that says sports, and then we could add another one that says museums. And if we save that, we refresh, now we have these two bullet points here for our navigation. Now, to actually link these things down to the sections below, we need to do a little bit of preliminary work. The first thing is we need to go back down to those sections and we need to give them an ID. So this is the beginning of the sports section. And what I can do is I can go inside of that opening tag and I can say ID equals, and I'll give it a string of sports. And then I'll do the same thing for the museums section. I'll say ID equals museums. And then at the top where I was making this list, what I can do, and this is also an introductory into inline elements, is I can do an A tag or an anchor tag, which is an inline element that links to either elements inside of the current document or to an outside resource through a URL. So if we are wanting to link to this page and an element on this page, like the sections that we were just talking about, what we can do is we can do a pound sign and then the name of the section. So that would be sports. And then we can come inside of the A tag and we can say sports. And so then now if I save this and I refresh, you can see it's now blue. It's got an underline. It looks like a link, right? And if I click this, it doesn't actually look like it's working, but that's because the page isn't long enough yet. And so what I'll do is I'll come down to the end of this paragraph tag and I will just say lorem times 3 and I'll hit tab, and that will add in some placeholder lorem ipsum text. And so that'll make the page longer. And then now if I click this button, it takes me down. It would normally put the sports at the top of the page, but because it's not that long, it's not going to work. So then what we can do is we can also do the same thing for museums. So we'll come in here, we'll do an A tag, and this will go to a pound sign and go to museums. Then I'll add the text into the tag like so. I'll save that, and then I'll come down here. Did I already add? Okay, I already added it down there. And so the same thing now, if I refresh, it'll pop down to museums. So let's take a look at some of the other inline tags that we have available to us. One of the more popular ones that you'll see is the strong tag. And so what we can do is, if I wanted to make this first sentence bold, I can do a strong tag, and then I'll add it right there, and I'll save. And then now this very first sentence here is in bold, and then I'll make the last sentence here, wherever it starts, one right there. What I'll do is I'll hit Command or Control Shift P, and I will do emit wrap with abbreviation, and then I'll type in M, and that'll actually wrap what I had highlighted in a tag. And so this is the M tag, or the emphasis tag, and what it will do is it will make whatever text inside of it, it'll make it italicized, and so you can see that here. So that is some more inline elements that you can use. I also want to point out that all of this is inside of this P tag, and it might be a little bit hard for you to read. Let me format this again. But if we were to look, you can see right here after this italicized text, there's a blank line. We've got a short line here with another sentence, and then another line where this starts, this is indented. You know, there's some weird beginning and ending here in this, but you don't see any of that over on the right. And that's because the white space inside of our P tag is not observed in our browser. The spacing in between the letters and the words is, but if I were to come right before this emphasis tag and just add a whole bunch of blank lines, you're not going to see that over here on the right. And that's because the browser doesn't care about all of this useless white space. It's going to ignore it, and it's just going to act like it isn't there. Okay, so one of the last things that I want to do is I want to show you how to bring in images into your web page. So I actually have a link here to an image for the Memphis Grizzlies. And so what I'll do is I'll come down here to the Grizzlies, and I'll come underneath it, and I will do an image tag. And I'm given two options if I use my emit abbreviation. The first thing is the source, and this is going to be either the path to the local image that you want to use or the URL for the hosted image that you want to use. And so I'll paste in the URL there for the image that I want to use, and then I'll hit tab. And the next thing we're seeing is the alt attribute, and this is for alt text or alternative text, where you want to describe the image that you are using. This is for accessibility, so that if someone who is visually impaired is using your website, they can listen to their screen reader read out the description of the image. So this one's pretty easy. This is just the Grizzlies logo or the Grizzlies mascot, but I'll save that, and then I'll refresh the page. And then now if I scroll down, you can see we have the Grizzlies logo here with the roster underneath. Now, I showed you how to use an A tag to link to specific things. So like I can click here and I can go down to the sports team, or I can click here and I can go down to the museum. But what if I wanted to link out to another website? Well, I'll show you an example of that by putting an A tag on the Grizzlies. And what I'll do is I will just link out to the NBA's website by going to www.nba.com/Grizzlies, and then inside of the tag, I'll just put Grizzlies. And so then I'll refresh and I'll scroll up, and now you can see that the Grizzlies is highlighted, it's blue. And if I click on it, it takes me to the NBA website for the Grizzlies. One thing that you might want to do is make it so that when somebody clicks this link, they don't leave your website, but instead it opens up the website that you have linked here in a new tab. And to do that, we come on to our A tag, and we're going to add a target, and inside of the target it will be _ blank, saying that when we click on this, we want to target a new blank window or tab. So I click this, and in a new tab it opens up the NBA's website, and I can tab back and forth in between my web page and the NBA's website. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you found this video interesting and helpful. You now know how to create pretty basic web pages. You could throw this up on a server somewhere on a host, and people could actually visit it, and you'd have your first real live website. If you have any questions about what we did in this video, drop them down in the comments below. I read all the comments, so I'll try to get back to you and answer your question. If you don't have any questions, feel free to just leave some other comment down there to boost the engagement on this video. It's free and it helps me out a lot. If you like the video, then leave a like. That also helps. If you're interested in becoming a full stack web developer completely for free, check out the Full Stack Bootcamp playlist on my channel. And if you want access to all of the bonus videos, coding exercises, and access to the private Discord community, check out my Patreon link down in the description below. In the next video, we're going to be talking about HTML forms and tables, so you won't want to miss that one. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy coding.